Hello, void and all who inhabit it. It's me, one of your top 10 least favorite black bisexuals. It has been a month, Henny. But today, listener, viewer, listener, I want us to focus our collective memory on the 5th of November, the year of our Lord 2020. That evening, out of the 400 people who still have Tumblr accounts, 226 of them were posting up a storm about Destail. If you missed it, one half of the greatest queerbaity ship of all time made a potentially not even romantic love confession to the other half, which was left unreciprocated before said confessor was promptly yanked to super hell. Combined with the rest of the chaotic news cycle, it made for a great 18 hours worth of memes. In this flurry of content, I saw a post that is essentially a headcanon of Stacey Abrams shipping Destail because Supernatural is one of her favorite shows, which is a fact in and of itself. That is definitely one of those I didn't have this on my 2020 bingo card type of moments, but honestly, girl, fuck bingo. We're all just collecting trinkets for the trophy case of a traumatic year. Anyway, what I found interesting about this post is the first half, in which OP lists out that Destail became popular because it presented an alternative to Wincest, which OP argues itself became popular because of a combined lack of female characters and any strong relationships other than the one between the two brothers. Now, I have the great esteem of having never seen an episode of Supernatural, but I have heard through the digital grapevine that it is a steaming hot dumpster fire of a show, and that the writers of said flaming garbage cannot write women, let alone women of color or anyone of color, very well at all. So this person's analysis probably does have some weight to it, but Supernatural was once part of a fandom conglomerate that was full of white/ships and disrespectful treatment of female characters by fans or the show or both. So this post led me to wonder, is it really a lack of well-written side characters that pushes /pairings to not only be an option, but to be the most popular options again and again across fandoms? First of all, I don't think people ship men together because there's no women to pair them with. People be gay, you feel me? So I already don't think that's why /pairings become popular. More interestingly, as we look across fandom, we'll notice a lot of interesting setups. In 2013, Tumblr user Centrum Lumina started the AO3 Ships Stats project. Each year, she tracks the amount of works produced and presents a list of top 100 ships based off the amount of content on the site. The project started from a desire to highlight the lack of fan fiction focused on women, femme/pairings, and people of color. From this data, I'm only going to look at the top 20, both out of ease and to focus on the best of the best of the best, sir. Year over year, we can see that the most popular ships share two common traits. They're between two men, and both those men are white.
But that's the sum total every year. No one fandom is going to, I don't know, create 20,000 new works in 1 year and jump up 50 spots in the rankings.
Well, luckily for us, starting in 2016, Centrum Lumina began to pull the amount of new works by year, and we can still see a similar trend among fictional pairings. I'm not going to be counting real people fan fiction ships because I think there are some extra layers to that onion that we will not be peeling back today. Regardless, whether we're looking at overall totals or new works by year, fandoms trend towards writing white/pairings, and I want to know why. This conversation would be lacking if I didn't start with acknowledging queerbaiting. If you'd like an in-depth look at what queerbaiting is and how it has evolved over time, I really recommend Rowan Ellis's video on it. But very simply, queerbaiting is a marketing technique in which content creators hint at but then don't actually depict queer characters. Supernatural is actually a masterclass on how to not only build but maintain a loyal fan base off of the strength of your queerbaiting alone. But this is a technique that's still typically focused towards white male pairings, so it's not a complete answer. If you grew up in the US or the UK, and I am including the Queen's Commonwealth because a lot of this applies to your favorite BBC programs, and sizable portions of a lot of fandoms include Anglophiles, you grew up being told that men are not affectionate, vulnerable, or share physical touch that isn't violent unless it's with their romantic partner. As a result, when a lot of us see a man being affectionate, vulnerable, or sharing nonviolent physical touch, we perceive the recipient of that behavior as a romantic interest because we have such poor expectations around platonic emotional intimacy for men. I think the inability to separate platonic emotional intimacy from genuine romantic interest can in part explain why there are so many ships between two characters who are blood relatives. Now, if you're writing a TV show in which there needs to be an emotional pull, which all shows do because why else would people stay invested, and you only write about white men because you're boring, it makes sense that the content you're creating would present the opportunity to mostly or only see platonic, emotional, intimate vulnerability between two white men. Take that setup and multiply it across an entire industry, and it becomes clearer as to why options are so limited. But it still doesn't answer for me why the most popular ships year after year are white/pairings, especially as we've been presented more diverse options as time has gone on. Even 2013 had fandoms in the top 20 that had plenty of other characters who were not white men, but were nowhere near as popular. The missing piece to the answer is racism and misogyny, but mostly racism. In my fandom, it's more likely than you think, and it's more embedded than you may realize. There are a few common tropes in slash pairings that illuminate how embedded racism is throughout fandom. Cue transition 4. Examples. Let's start in 2016. It's July. The Force Awakens has been out for 8 months, and the latest AO3 ship stats are about to be released, this time with a separate list just of top ships for 2016 alone. From the secondary list, unsurprisingly, 2 Star Wars pairings make the top 20, 1 even makes the top 10. The 2 pairings are Finn and Poe and Kylo and Hux. Guess which one ranked higher? I'll give you a hint. It's the pairing that includes a screaming fascist. Other than the popularity differences between these 2 ships being one that causes flames on the sides of my face, the treatment of Kylux versus Finn Poe exposes a key behavior in many fandoms: the mass interest in a beige blank slate character. A blank slate character in general is an underexplored or an unexplored character. We don't know their backstory in the canon, so you really can have a free-for-all in fan fiction of determining how they became who they are and what that means for who they could potentially become. There are a lot of blank slate characters in the sequel trilogy, but the fan favorite quickly became General Hux. And if you read fan fiction with him in it, the Hux of fanon is nothing like the Hux of canon. Fundamentally, who he is as a person is completely different. There is a widespread, fandom agreed upon rewrite of who this character is.
That's the point of fan fiction, isn't it?
Sure. But isn't it odd to you that the fan favorite quickly became the evil henchman with, at best, 10 minutes of screen time and not one of the 3 main characters whose backstories we also don't learn over the course of the film? Even if we just look at the slash stats, Finn Poe, though they are one of the top 20 ships of 2016, were only 94th overall that year. In 2020, that ship is sitting at its highest ever overall ranking at 89th. In comparison, Kylo and Hux entered at 57th overall and are currently 33rd, which is not even the highest that pairing has ever been. Why, when presented a film whose main cast is full of blank slate characters with stronger emotional bonds and connections and more screen time, do fans pick the random white man brooding in the corner? What makes him more appealing than our protagonist? what makes Kylo and Hux a more appealing ship, especially when Finpo shares a lot of tropes with some other super popular pairings, yet doesn't get half as much energy. Ruminate on why that is. While you're doing that, let's go back even further to 2013. It's once again the summer. The first Avengers film has been out for over a year, and this person on Tumblr is talking about pulling stats from an archive of our own. Alright girl, let's give it a look. Unsurprisingly, 2 MCU pairings make the top 20, one even makes the top 10. The 2 pairings are Steve and Tony and Phil Coulson and Clint Barton?
Who the hell is that?
With these 2 pairings, we're introduced to 2 other common tropes among slash pairings. The first being they hate each other, so of course they must be fucking, which admittedly is common across fandom, but what is particularly unique to slash is the length of the reach people will perform in order to pair 2 men together that leads to practically any interaction being perceived as sexual tension. The second trope is that of the dartboard pairing. A dartboard pairing, which is a term I just made up, is when the fandom takes a list of all viable characters and figuratively throw a dart to figure out who to pair together. You 2 are left, so you'll do. To give a little perspective, Coulson and Barton interact for 47 seconds in Thor, which came out 2 years prior to this data, and have absolutely no scenes together in the Avengers, which is the film that really ignited the vigor around this pairing. Despite having a sum total of less than a minute of on-screen interaction, Coulson and Barton would go on to rank in the top 20 overall pairings for the next 3 years, ironically enough falling out of favor once they started to have more canonical interactions in the comics. In comparison, Barton and Romanoff, a het pairing that is canon in the comics but not in the film, between 2 characters who share more than 60 seconds of screen time per movie, would go on to rank lower than Coulson and Barton until 2019. The argument that there are no strong side characters or no stronger emotional bonds than the one between these 2 white men starts to lose steam when you see that there are strong characters with strong emotional bonds, and fans will still flock to characters with minimal screen time or favor creating pairings out of next to no positive interaction. I chose the rewriting of Hux and the pairing of Coulson and Barton because they stick out as extremes within content that I like, but a lot of fans in multiple fandoms will favor the random white man in the back over literally anybody else, irrespective of how these characters actually exist. Add on top of this the handling of characters who threaten the white ship or the treatment of fans or actors of these characters, and it's easy to see that the motivating drive behind the surge of white slash ships is something more than just,
this is the best option and I really like these 2 together.
Fan and rewrites of characters overlapping depictions based in canon are a huge example to the contrary. I cannot stress this with a better example than General Hux. If you know nothing about the Star Wars sequel trilogy fandom, know this. The largest pairing for years was one which included a character who is literally an allegory for fascism. The level of I don't give a fuck, I'm just trying to catch this fictional nut is pretty high. We can also see how casting can increase or decrease interest around a character. This year, Aziraphale and Crowley in Good Omens and Geralt and Jaskier in The Witcher were 2 very popular ships with a lot of new content, despite the fact that these stories have existed as books and video games in one case for years prior. Being given a high-quality canon visual depiction of these characters sparked new interest. On the flip side, we can see how fans switch up once characters who were or had the potential to be fan favorites are cast as people of color. From Carlos in Welcome to Night Vale to Iris West in The Flash, suddenly now this character isn't so interesting, their story isn't so engaging, fanfic and meta can't be written without tapping into horrible generalizations and stereotypes. There's an overall lack of investment and care being given. So then, what is motivating people to ship white men together? As I was digging up the stats for this, I learned of the term migratory slash fandom, which to me sounds like a fancy way of saying I fetishize gay men as a hobby, but is described by fanlore.org as /fans who are always on the lookout for the next shiny new juggernaut pairing. Not everyone who likes / can be categorized as fitting within migratory / fandom, but I think this subsection exposes what I believe is at the root of a lot of people's motivation for shipping two white men together. There is a difference in interest leading you to check out new content, especially in hopes of finding queer representation that won't be a massive disappointment, and looking for face claims for your favorite romantic tropes. To me, migratory / fandom fits in the latter, considering that a lot of the pairings that get picked up by migratory / fandom are white / pairings that recycle the same few tropes and dynamics. It leads me to believe that people are looking for something visually appealing more than anything else. Visually appealing is working here as a nice way of saying that a lot of people have preferences rooted in racism. Because of years of people acting a damn donkey on Grindr, there's now a lot of sociological research around race-based sexual preferences among gay men basically being another manifestation of racism. I don't think it is a big leap to say that the same can be true of anyone else, irrespective of gender or sexuality. In their article, very few people say no whites, men of color, and the racial politics of desire. Han and Choi write, whether one is sexually excited or left frustratingly flaccid by someone of another race is among the most trivial of concerns. What is important is that deeply embedded in those stereotypes about sexual attractiveness and sexual prowess that lead to one's seemingly personal sexual preferences is a very public distortion of the sexual worth of one group and the sexual bankruptcy of another that has roots in the larger system of racial maligning of minority groups deployed by the dominant group, specifically for the purpose of promoting racial segregation both structurally and culturally. Their research is specifically about dating preferences, but we can apply the issues behind preference to the way people navigate fandom spaces as well. Just as we don't consume media in a vacuum, we don't create media in one either. It's easy to say,
just let people ship what they want.
And, for the most part, that's not really the issue. Like, maybe you are part of the
One thing about me, I'm a lust after some pink pee-pee
crew. Maybe that's you. But maybe you should wonder why in almost every single fandom there is a sizable portion that is often very loud and very dominant that feels the same way. From shipping to meta to headcanons to fan and recreations, there is a prominent dynamic of exclusion within a lot of fandom spaces. It is often multiplied over and can lead to the active mistreatment of fans or actors of color, or the creation of racist fan fiction or fan art. And it is all rooted in the same mentality that sees white cis men as the most desirable. When comparing fandom reception of white characters to characters of color, we can see that desire can easily translate to treatment. How the fandom reads and treats a character can be traced back to who is deemed desirable, and thus who is worth investing in, from romantic headcanons and beyond. This lens of transactional desire doesn't go away when people are writing about or creating content regarding characters that they do like. If anything, it switches from determining if a character is worthy to hyper-focusing on the things that make them worthy, at times to the point of revising the whole character entirely.
I know this is a character I want to invest in, so now I'm going to spend time chiseling out the mental image I have so that I can gain more entertainment from this medium.
I think this deep-seated investment also explains why we have a lot of slash fiction that dabbles in the wonderful wide world of gay stereotypes. People invest in crafting up characters and dynamics that are sexually or romantically appealing to them, and at times often rely on stereotypes in order to do so. In the top 20 of this year, Geralt and Jaskier from The Witcher are the highest ranked new pairing, coming in at number 5. Seeing that stat caused me to remember all of the memes when The Witcher first came out, of people calling Jaskier a twink and saying he's a bottom and that he loves to ride Geralt until his lace lifts. Beyond the fact that the main insight we have to Jaskier's sexual behavior is the running joke that he's always hiding from noblemen who want to kill him because he's always sleeping with their wives, which, if anything, points to Jaskier being another chaotic bisexual icon, what about his character makes him a bottom? Or twink, for that matter? That reading of Jaskier is based off of stereotypes pulled from how his character exists in relation to another. His worth is in his proximity to Geralt. Jaskier isn't read as gay because he drinks iced coffee all the time. He's read as gay, and specifically a gay bottom, because he's smaller and weaker than Geralt.
This person is physically weak, so they are a bottom. And because they are a bottom, that means they behave like this, and this.
So much of the framing of gay or just queer male characters in fanon is through the lens of who they are sexually, often by way of stereotype. Even the tendency of labeling somebody as a top or a bottom is rooted in connecting personality traits to sexual activity and vice versa. Beyond the fact that, you probably shouldn't make assumptions on people's sexual proclivities based on how they behave, a lot of times these characters don't even fit the list of behaviors subscribed to them based off of the position that someone labels them as. It's just,
this character has these physical traits, so these are these sexual/personality traits that I'm going to give to them.
Which are often rooted in stereotypes connected to what the fan is most interested in and desires sexually or romantically. There's a reliance in general on stereotypes to build in the power dynamics, the personalities, the relationship structures that slash fans want, which, again, isn't that the point of fan fiction, especially explicit fan fiction in which you do have to make this all up because there isn't any proof in the canon? And again, sure, but why always like this? Why always from this limited set of stereotypes? Beyond stereotypes being connected to fans' own sexual desires, the biggest and main component in how characters are treated in fanon and placed in pairings that are actually invested in is if that character is seen as desirable and how. If a character is not desired, even if the tropes are there, even if some stereotypes could easily be tacked on, they will not be invested in. People aren't looking for genuine emotional connection or even coded queer interaction. They're looking for vessels of desire. They are looking for a set of traits placed onto a character or characters that look a very specific way. At times, this manifests as, I want there to be a character in the narrative that I can live through, and I don't want it to be you. But for slash pairings, especially because a lot of people who like slash are not gay men, a bulk of it is rooted in attraction to the characters. And for a lot of people, peak attraction is still cisgendered white men. The drive switches from looking for characters to live vicariously through to,
These two guys are hot. You know what would be even hotter? Seeing them fuck.
well, reading about it because you won't be seeing it in the canon, girl. With or without queer baiting, emotional connection, or any actual interaction in the canon, there are huge portions of fandom that are looking to create a fantasy with every and any white man available simply by essence of him being a white man. You can also mesh both of these together to get an explanation of the treatment of alternative characters, especially women of color, who are presented as romantic options within the canon. In 2013, when the first set of data was pulled, Kirk and Spock from the new Star Trek movies ranked 52 spaces higher than Spock and Uhura. Today, Kirk and Spock still make the top 50, but Spock and Uhura aren't even on the list anymore. It is both a dedication to experiencing desire through white men and a continued rejection of any character who is not a white man. The popularity of #sextuple_F visual outlets of desire that allow fans to dabble in forbidden stereotypes or ironclad fan-created archetypes paired with an inability for people to spread that chaotic gay energy to any other pairings, melds together to create a repetitive shipping style that is not at all subversive, at times is actively antagonistic, and is often fueled by preferences that are baked in racism. Does this mean if you like a white/ship, especially one of the ones that I mentioned, that you are a flaming racist? No, but we all live in a white supremacist society. Questioning the ways that impacts you from the macro to the micro should be seen as an opportunity to grow, not as a personal attack. And, as stated in my unofficial motto, we do not interact with media in a vacuum. Slash fandom is an arena in which this is blatantly obvious, but the fanatical behavior that some slash fans exhibit to create, maintain, and defend their favorite pairings only highlights a lot of ugly behavior and mentalities that exist throughout fandom. Behaviors and mentalities that ultimately do impact the way real people interact with and treat each other. Does this mean you can't like any more new white/pairings? Honestly, no one gives a shit if you like this ship or that ship specifically. The issue is the huge trend across fandoms of people favoring white characters or characters they can easily whitewash, to the point of harassing fans that point out the potential pitfalls and issues of this very limited type of engagement, which happens to be, funnily enough, most often fans of color. Examining trends in slash fandom is but one way of looking at the toxic environments that exist in fandoms, at the racism that remains unquestioned and unchallenged. The point isn't to shame people who are attracted to unseasoned, undercooked personifications of salmonella, but to look deeper at who we consider to be valuable and how our behavior changes when someone does or doesn't fit that criteria, even if that person is fictional. If you made it to the end, thank you for making it to the end. I'm no longer looking straight at the thing. We leaning forward. My back hurt. This is the second time recording this because the lighting, girl, whatever. We're here. I'm going to link a bunch of Stitch Media Mix's posts down below. She writes a lot about fandom racism and is a great source if you're looking for a more detailed view. Also, I know Tumblr is a hell site graveyard, but there's still a lot of cool people talking about a lot of cool stuff. So, dust off that 2-factor verification ground, get you some knowledge. Anyway, I don't know if we're going to be doing all of this again. This was already a lot and I didn't even edit. My back hurt. We'll see. Until then, stay safe. I'll catch you in the next echo chamber.